Patricia Spencer and Pamela Havley. On October 31, 1969, a cool day, 15-year-old Pamela Pam Sue Havley and 16-year-old Patricia Patty and Spencer walked out of their Oscoda, Michigan school together. Although the two teenagers were not known to be friends, there was a local rumor that suggested they may have dabbled with drugs and alcohol, which led some internet detectives to believe that the two became close because of their common experiences. It is thought that the two females skipped their afternoon courses that day in order to leave school early and travel to an unidentified location. Some accounts on the case suggest that a bomb scare may have made this truancy possible because it could have been simpler to leave unnoticed amid any mayhem that occurred at the business. The two had informed their families earlier in the day that they would be attending their school's homecoming football game in the evening and then going to a party, even though they were traveling to an unknown location. Pam mentioned that she will be going to the event with her boyfriends and friends. The girls were initially last seen walking down River Road away from their school and towards the business sector. He had, in fact, taken the girls to a petrol station near River Road and Interstates 23, according to a witness who came forward in February 2013. He told the police that he had given the two a lift. Therefore, he was surprised that the investigators were unaware of this beforehand. The detectives observed that their case files had no such reports. Although it's unclear how or why this confusion happened, the witness was exonerated of any role in the disappearances of the teenagers. When Pam's mother Lois, a single mother of 3 kids, and her 2 youngest daughters came home after trick-or-treating that Halloween night, Pam's boyfriend informed her that she hadn't shown up for the party or the school football game. When Lois contacted the parents of her daughter's classmates and friends after this discovery, she found out that Patty was also AWOL and had not shown up for the 2 gatherings. Permitted by this, the relatives filed missing reports for both girls. Police interviewed friends and family over the course of the following several days in an attempt to locate the couple and determine their last known whereabouts. At first, it was thought that the teenagers had escaped to Flint on their own initiative. Their family were not persuaded, especially Pam's. Later, Pam's sister told the media that the 15-year-old seemed happy and to be in a good place in her life, so she didn't think she had ran away. In addition, she and her partner had recently become engaged. Moreover, it appeared that neither female planned to stay gone for very long because neither had taken their ID, handbag, or extra set of clothes. After a week, neither of the girls communicated with their families. Investigators started to speculate at this point that Halloween may have been the occasion of something more nefarious. Detectives eventually started to speculate that the girls might have become victims of a sketchy character if they had continued to hitchhike. They postulated that the two were murdered after being kidnapped by 2 or more people. Although the possibility of a connection to the Oakland County child killer was investigated, it doesn't seem likely. After following one lead, investigators discovered that the object they thought was a makeshift cemetery in the woods was actually an animal buried underground. Pam's family, who were desperate for information, offered a $1,000 prize for any tip that would help them find their missing loved one, but the money was never claimed. The case became cold very soon because there were no leads or witnesses. 16 years later, in 1985, a tip came in to the police claiming the 2 adolescents had been killed by 2 guys in the region and buried close to a barn that the teens used for gatherings. A fresh team re-examined the case in 2010 after decades had passed, interviewing acquaintances, relatives, and any possible witnesses. At this time, cadaver dogs and excavating equipment were used to look into the location of the barn mentioned in the tip, which was on Brooks Road and belonged to a man named Jack Searle in 1969. Nevertheless, no evidence of human remains or girl belongings was discovered. Whether Jack Searle was ever regarded as a person of interest is unknown. Further searches in 1969 of other localities frequented by teens yielded no results. Mary, one of Pam's sisters, who was only 8 years old when the adolescent disappeared, told the media in February 2011 that her family thought the 2 girls had passed away. She informed the Oscoda media that Patty and Pam had passed away. In our darkest corners of the soul, the families are aware of this. Although we are clueless about the how or why, someone knows. Mary is still working to resolve the case. In the years since the 15-year-old vanished, Pam's parents and grandparents have both passed away, leaving them to never know what became of their cherished daughter and granddaughter. The Oscoda Township Police Department has stated in recent years that the age of the case is currently their largest obstacle. They think there is a solution, but they feel that things are getting harder with time. Authorities said in February 2013 that they had located a person of interest, but in order to move on with the investigation, they required further details. Pam's boyfriend has never been regarded as a suspect or a person of interest. It is important to note here, both girls' DNA has been collected and is kept on file so that other Jane Does who fit their descriptions can be compared. While Patty's dental records are not available, Pam's are. The fingerprints of neither girl have been located. On Halloween night in 1969, Patricia and Spencer and Pamela Sue Mobley were last seen strolling along River Road, away from their school and towards Oscoda's business center. The man who gave them a lift and dropped them off at River Road in Interstate 23 is the last known witness sighting of them. They haven't been seen or communicated with since. At 16 years old, Patricia's height ranged from 5'3" to 54, and her weight was approximately pound 120. She is characterized as a Caucasian female with blue eyes and brown-hued hair. Although she should have been wearing spectacles, she wasn't when she vanished. She goes by Patty and has a scarf from a dog bite on one leg. When she was last seen, she was sporting a brown jumper, a brown tweed or plaid skirt, brown shoes with a high heel, and a silver necklace with a pendant with a peace symbol on it. When Pamela vanished, she was only 15 years old. She has a scar on the bridge of her nose and is between 5'6" and 5'8" tall, and weighed between 100 and 115 pounds when she was last seen. She was wearing a brown-trimmed, 3/4-length white fake fur coat, a long-sleeved shirt with ruffled sleeves, a brown and white plaid skirt, knee-high socks, and chunky heels when she vanished. Patty would be 68 years old, and Pam would be 67 if the girls were still living. In recent years, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has made photos of the girls available for public viewing. While Pam's photograph depicts her at 57, Patty's portrays her at 60. You can call 9897-599-9113 to reach the Oscoda Township Police Department if you know anything about this case. As an alternative, you can dial +1-800-843-5678 to reach the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Moving on to the next case. Lars Mitank. Lars Mitank, who was originally from Germany and was 28 years old at the time, took a vacation with a handful of his friends in Bulgaria in July of 2014. They made the decision to go to a bar quickly after their jet landed since he wanted to go out with his pals instead of staying in the hotel. As a result of the fact that Lars was a huge fan of Werder Bremen and he came across supporters of the rival Bayern Munich side, he began to argue with other tourists about football while he was out partying. In the end, this disagreement resulted in a fistfight, during which Lars sustained an injury to his eardrum. In the final stages of his journey, a physician recommended that Lars refrain from flying, so he remained in Bulgaria for more medical care. He was successful in persuading his buddies to depart without him. Following the conclusion of his time with his pals, he proceeded to his hotel and placed a call to his mother. Not only did he feel terrified, but he also mentioned that the hotel appeared to be peculiar. After another couple of hours had passed, Lars called his mother once more and informed her that he was currently hiding out because 4 men were intent on pursuing him. After the call was over, he sent her a message. Where can I find Cefuroxime 500? Which medications were prescribed to him for his ruptured eardrum? What was the name of the antibiotics she prescribed? The taxi took him to the airport 2 hours after he had arrived. It is possible to view footage from the airport's closed-circuit television system that shows Lars entering the medical center at the airport while carrying all of his bags. After only a few minutes, Lars was observed escaping the airport without any of his stuff. He was seen running out of the airport. Immediately after leaving the airport, he climbed over a barbed wire fence and then vanished into a neighboring woodland. He vanished without a trace. That was the last time anyone saw or heard from him. According to Lars' family, he did not have a history of mental illness, and they further suggested that his hysterical conduct might be the result of an undiscovered brain injury that occurred during the bar brawl. It was also mentioned by the physician who treated him in Bulgaria that the antibiotics that were prescribed to him could induce adverse consequences, such as erratic behavior if they were taken with alcohol. To this day, there is no information available regarding what took place with Lars. Moving on to the next case. The spontaneous combustion of Matilda Rooney. Patrick Rooney and Matilda Rooney were an old couple who resided in the vicinity of Seneca, Illinois. John Larson, the couple's hired worker, joined them for a night of casual drinking on the evening of December 24, 1885. The couple found themselves in a comfortable setting. Pat Rooney, who was 72 years old at the time, was the owner of a modest but successful farm and required assistance with his day-to-day activities. The family extended an invitation to John Larson, who was recruited by him, to spend Christmas with them. It has been reported by Larson that Mr. and Mrs. Rooney had a couple of beers together on that particular evening. When Larson had finished his 2 drinks, he made the decision to retire to his room, which was located on the second floor and right above the kitchen. However, at some time he experienced a coughing attack and had difficulty breathing, despite the fact that he fell asleep quite soon. On the other hand, he believed that he was only getting a cold, and he quickly fell back asleep again. The following morning, when Larson awoke, he walked downstairs to the chamber of Mr. Rooney and discovered the farmer laying on the floor. Larson initially believed that his employer had consumed an excessive amount of alcohol the night before, so he attempted to shake the individual in order to assist him in getting into bed. Nevertheless, Mr. Rooney did not respond to my questions. After coming to the conclusion that the elderly man had passed away, Larson hurried to the chamber of his wife, Rooney, but she was nowhere to be found. From the beginning, Larson had a strong hunch that Mrs. Rooney had murdered her husband and then fled the scene. Therefore, he made the decision to walk to the Murphy residence, which was located nearby, in order to seek assistance. Michael Murphy and he came back together, and the 2 of them made the decision to search the house. During the course of their investigation, they discovered that the pillows in the Larsons' room on the second floor had become charred with soot. This was the reason why he complained of coughing and was unable to breathe while he was sleeping. On the other hand, the most surprising thing was found in the kitchen. It was in the middle of the kitchen where they discovered a hole that was burnt and blackened. There was a hole that was large enough to allow the remains of Miss Rooney to slide through. It was discovered that the left foot was located almost at the edge of the opening in the floor through which the body had vanished. The flesh had been completely devoured. A calcined skull, a portion of a spinal column, and a handful of white ashes were also discovered beneath the floor of the kitchen. Dr. Floyd Clendiden, who served as the coroner for LaSalle County, came to the conclusion that the skull and the hip bone were the single most important pieces of evidence that could be used to establish that a human person had been incinerated at that location. According to his hypothesis, Mrs. Rooney was consumed by a fire that reached temperatures of over 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit and burnt him to death. However, there was no other theory that could explain how such a serious fire could have prevented the rest of the house from being consumed by flames. It was established that Mrs. Rooney's husband had passed away as a result of smoke inhalation, whereas Larson was spared death due to the fact that he slept on the second story behind a door that was closed. A person who was a descendant of the Rooneys felt that their deaths were the consequence of divine vengeance for the excessive amount of alcohol that they consumed on Christmas Eve. Moving on to the next case. Sauter children disappearance. Near Fayetteville, West Virginia, there was a billboard that displayed grainy photos of 5 children all along Route 16. This billboard was visible to anybody driving along Route 16 for nearly 4 decades. It is true that Fayetteville was and still is a small town, and in this particular case, rumors have always played a more significant role than evidence. Nothing ever came to a consensus regarding whether or not the 5 children were still alive. Nevertheless, it was universally acknowledged that George and Jenny Sauter, together with 9 of their 10 children, went to sleep on the evening before Christmas in the year 1945. During that evening, a fire broke out, which ultimately resulted in a horrific tragedy that led to the disappearance of 5 children. Around 12:30 in the morning, the telephone rang, which marked the beginning of the chain of sad events. As Ginny made her way downstairs to respond to the call, She overheard a woman requesting a name that she was not familiar with. Later on, Ginny recalled the peculiar laugh that the woman had. The lights were still on, and the curtains were not drawn, which are the two things that the children often attended to when they were up later than their parents. She also noted that the curtains were not pulled. Considering that it was Christmas Eve, the youngsters were permitted to remain up a little bit later than is customary. She presumed that the youngsters had gone to the attic, which is the conventional location for them to sleep. Around 1 in the morning, Jenny was once more roused from her sleep by the resounding sound of something hitting the roof of the home with a tremendous thud. The smell of smoke greeted her once more as she awoke after another half an hour. As soon as she stood up, she discovered that the room that her husband had been using as his office was on fire. George awoke, and he awoke his older sons. She roused him up. The residence was escaped by both of the parents, as well as 4 of their children. They shouted out in a panicked manner to the 5 children who were still inside the house, but they did not receive any response. Despite the fact that the staircase was already on fire, they were unable to get to the attic. In his initial interview with the police, one of the children, John Sauter, stated that he climbed up to the attic in order to wake up his brothers who were sleeping there. However, he later amended his statement to say that he merely called up there and did not actually see any of his siblings. Unexpectedly difficult were the efforts that were made to locate assistance and rescue the children. At the same time that the phone was not functioning properly, it was quickly noticed that a ladder that was supposed to be resting against the home and might have been used to access the attic was not in its typical location. A water barrel that could have been used to put out the fire had frozen solid but was not available for use. Both of the trucks that George used in his business were attempting to climb up to the house, but neither of them would start. George even tried to pull both of them up to the house himself. During the subsequent half an hour, the Sauters watched as the house burned down and eventually collapsed. In the aftermath of the tragic tragedy, the Sauters' lamented children were kidnapped because their corpses were never discovered despite their search. A private experiment was carried out by Ginny, in which she burned animal bones to determine whether or not the fire could entirely devour them. On each occasion, she was left with a stack of bones that had been burnt. To add insult to injury, she was informed by a worker at a cremation that bones are still there after bodies are burned for 2 hours at a temperature of 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Given that their home was completely obliterated in a span of 45 minutes, it seems inconceivable that the bones of the children could not have been discovered. According to a large number of accounts, there were other sightings. Quite a few of them commented on a vehicle that had Florida license plates. A woman who was staying at a hotel in Charleston saw photographs of the children in a newspaper and stated that she had seen them approximately 4 or 5 weeks after the fire. She went on to say that the youngsters were accompanied by a total of 4 people, including 2 women and 2 males. Throughout their whole search for their children, George and Jenny Sauter never gave up. They frequently traveled throughout the United States based on information obtained from sightings and tips. It was at the scene of the fire, when many little fragments of bones were discovered, that they made the decision to begin a new investigation. According to the findings of the study, however, the bones had not been subjected to any form of fire. According to the findings of the research, the bones were most likely present in the shipment of earth that was used to fill the basement. 1968, more than 20 years after the fire, was the year that the final clue was discovered. At this point, Jenny discovered an envelope that was specifically addressed to her. A picture of a man in his mid-20s was found inside the package. When the fire occurred, she and George were unable to deny the likeness to their son, Louis, who was 9 years old at the time. However, despite the fact that they had employed a private investigator, this probe was yet another fruitless attempt. While George passed away not long after, Ginny made it a point to retain the billboard with her 5 children who had gone missing until the time of her own passing in 1989. Sylvia, the only child of the Sauter family to have survived, is now 69 years old and continues to harbor the hope that she may one day locate her siblings. To this day, she claims that the night in 1945, when she was just 2 years old, is the first time she can recall anything. Moving on to the next case. Sarah Mobley Hall. In 1984, 27-year-old Sarah Mobley Hall and her 10-year-old son Derek Mobley resided in Charlotte, North Carolina. During the day, Sarah, a single mother, worked with kids who had difficulties. Derek was one of those youngsters with exceptional needs. Derek was characterized by all as a cheerful young man who got along with everyone. When Charlotte police officers arrived to Sarah's Ventura Way home on March 14, 1984, they found a horrifying crime scene. Derek and Sarah were brutally murdered by someone who broke into their home. According to autopsies, they had both been battered and strangled. Despite the copious amount of labor detectives put into tracking down potential suspects, the case was never solved. Investigators looked into the case again over time. Johnny Jennings was one of those investigators in 1998. Using evidence gathered from the 1998 murder scene, he was able to identify the suspect's DNA. Regretfully, DNA technology was not developed enough in those days to identify the offender using DNA. Investigators have only lately been able to utilize DNA to identify a person thanks to genetic genealogy. Investigators in South Carolina were directed to a person of interest following DNA testing. The FBI assisted Charlotte police in obtaining samples of that person's DNA. He is James Thomas Pratt, 60 years of age. Additional testing verified that Pratt was in fact accountable for Sarah's and Derek Mobley's experiences. On February 1, 2023, he was taken into custody in a motel located in York County, South Carolina. He was accused of murdering them. He is being detained without being allowed to post bail. As part of an ongoing investigation, investigators confirmed that Pratt and Sarah had been in a relationship but did not provide any other information regarding the case, motive, or other specifics. Captain Joel McNelly of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department stated at a press conference announcing the arrest that forensic DNA played a significant role in identifying the perpetrator in a case that many people had long since forgotten. These people are probably forgotten by society. He said, "It's been a long time. Despite all that has transpired, the family and we have never forgotten. A family has been waiting for 39 years, and they are curious as to what has transpired. Imagine spending 40 years in a chair and not knowing what happened to your sister or your nephew. And for this family, having this resolution is really, really crucial." Mary Day, Sarah's sister, said this. "Hearing that we can now provide some closure after all these years is really exciting. I sincerely hope that this individual lives out the rest of his days behind bars and am appreciative that the authorities have located him." Moving on to the next case. Ray Greyar. From 1985 until February 2005, Ray Greyar, an American attorney, held the position of District Attorney for Centre County, Pennsylvania. He served in this capacity until February 2005. Since the April 15th, Greyar has not been seen or heard from, and the circumstances behind his disappearance remain a mystery. On the morning of April 15, 2005, at approximately 11:30 a.m., Greyar called his girlfriend at the time to let her know that he was driving through the Brush Valley region, which was not extremely far from their residence. In spite of this, he did not show up at his residence, and his girlfriend filed a missing person report shortly after that evening. In the time that has passed since then, the case of Ray Greyar has developed into one of the most intriguing instances in the nation. During the course of the past 10 years, investigators have engaged in activities such as diving to the bottom of lakes, digging up graves, pursuing over 300 sightings that have been recorded from Arizona to North Carolina, and even consulting a psychic, conducting an interview with a member of the Hells Angels, and utilizing technology obtained from NASA. However, none of these attempts were successful in locating the seasoned district attorney, who had reached the age of 59 at the time of his disappearance. A red Mini Cooper, which was the vehicle that Ray Greyar had been driving, was discovered in the parking lot of an antique store in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, some 55 miles away from his residence. This was the first piece of evidence that pointed to Ray's disappearance. Several months later, his laptop and hard drive, both of which were issued by the county, were discovered separately between a bridge that connected Lewisburg and Milton. The investigators have been considering 3 different scenarios from the very beginning. Greyar either took his own life, was the victim of a crime, or walked away on purpose while he was still alive. Particularly since February 2009, when a review of his Google history on his home computer discovered that someone had been searching for ways to fry a hard drive and water damage to a notebook computer, the most prevalent opinions have been that he committed himself or walked away from the situation. Before taking his own life in 1996, Roy, Ray's older brother, had been struggling with depression for a very long time. His death was discovered a few days after the authorities discovered his car parked beside the Great Miami River in Ohio. The authorities had found his car. Because of this kind of history, the police decided to conduct a comprehensive search of the river, which included the participation of boat owners, as well as people who were just curious about the situation. Ray, however, never genuinely thought that his brother had committed suicide, since he was under the impression that Roy would never leave his two sons without a parent. Additionally, it was peculiar that this case was handled by the minuscule Belafonte Police Department, where just one detective was assigned to handle Greyar's case in addition to numerous others. As of 2014, the state police took control of the investigation. However, this occurred 9 years after Greyar had been reported missing and 2 years after he had been officially declared dead. To this day, Ray's daughter is under the impression that she will never be able to obtain a conclusive response to the question of what happened to her father. Moving on to the next case. The Toxic Lady. The term toxic lady refers to an inexplicable medical issue that is associated with a woman named Gloria Ramirez. She is responsible for making a number of individuals sick after they were exposed to her body components and blood. Ramirez was taken to the emergency room of Riverside General Hospital in Moreno Valley, California, on the evening of February 19, 1994. He was hospitalized there for treatment of his condition. As a result of advanced cervical cancer, she was experiencing the symptoms of the disease. In addition to this, she was experiencing signs of tachycardia, which is characterized by an irregular pattern of breathing, while simultaneously exhibiting a significant level of confusion. In addition to the other medications that are related with her health condition, the employees of the medical facility administered an injection of a combination of sedatives to her in an effort to calm her down. Due to the fact that Ramirez did not respond favorably to this treatment, the medical staff ultimately opted to perform a defibrillation on her heart. At that point, a number of individuals began to observe an oily material emanating from Ramirez's body through the skin. Additionally, the medical staff saw a smell that was reminiscent of fruit emanating from the mouth of the patient. A pair of nurses took blood from Ramirez's arm as all of this was going on. As they were doing so, they noticed unusual particles floating in the blood, as well as a stench that was similar to ammonia emanating from the tube. During this time, 3 members of the medical staff passed out, and the staff members themselves began to experience weird feelings. Overall, 23 persons became unwell, and 5 of them were admitted to the hospital. It was determined that Ramirez had died from kidney failure after he had struggled for 45 minutes. The matter was chosen to be looked into by the Department of Health and Human Services of the state of California. On a team consisting of 2 scientists, there was no explanation that could be considered rational or scientific. There is a widespread belief that the healthcare worker was affected by mass hysteria. On the other hand, the 2 nurses who were being responsible for handling the blood had a number of health issues, which is evidence that something caused them to become ill. Following Ramirez's passing, her body was made available for an independent autopsy and burial 2 months after her passing, but the body had already decayed to an unacceptable degree. On the 10th week after her passing, Ramirez was laid to rest in a burial that was not marked. Moving on to the next case. Kidnapping. An image was taken of a young woman who was assumed to be in her 20s and was walking along the pavement of the parking lot of the Corona Mall in Corona, California on November 7, 2004. During the course of the video, there is a moment when a black Toyota Solara arrives behind her. In the case that the woman saw the vehicle, she would immediately begin to run, but she would finally be ran down by the people who were inside the vehicle. It was eventually hauled back by 2 men and stuffed into the trunk of the vehicle. Considering the manner in which the woman reacts in the video, the authorities have come to the conclusion that this woman might have known either the man or the car she was riding in. At this point in time, there are no conclusive leads in the investigation, nor is there any evidence that can even start to indicate that this was a genuine kidnapping. Due to the fact that the footage was very hazy, Neither the woman nor the guys have been identified as of yet. Another thing that is really unsettling and peculiar is the fact that none of the witnesses or bystanders did anything to actually stop this from happening. The majority of them simply turned their heads or observed as it took place. Moving on to the next case. Edward Mbridge. On May 20, 1871, 21-year-old Flora Shallcross Stone, a divorcee, married 41-year-old Edward Mbridge. In Surrey, England on 18/30, Mbridge was born, the son of a reasonably prosperous family, his father being a prosperous merchant. Despite the fact that his father passed away when he was just 13 years old, Mbridge appeared committed to being well known. At the age of 22, he departed the United Kingdom in search of a fresh experience in the United States. With his new bride engaged in entertaining visitors and going to the theater, Mbridge had little in common with her, probably because of their 20-year age difference. On the other hand, the photographer was more interested in his work and reading dense literature. He would frequently travel for weeks at a time without returning home to capture pictures. The couple's first and only child was born to Flora a few years after their April 14, 1874, wedding. Floridu Helius Mbridge, the son. Though it's unclear exactly when Flora started having extramarital affairs in the early years of their union. Major Harry Larkins, an Evening Post reporter, was a close friend of the family and had rapidly become close to the single mother. When Larkins started a new work at a mine near Calistoga, California, Mbridge apparently learned of the affair and believed it was over when he sent his wife to live with relatives. But when Flora's maternity nurse approached Mbridge in October 1874, she disclosed that the couple had been communicating and exchanging love letters during her pregnancy, some of which the nurse had in her possession. She also had a picture of the child, and Flora had written little Harry on the back, which made Mbridge think he wasn't Florida's real father. Mbridge went in search of Larkins on October 17th. He said, "I have a message for you from my wife." When he found him, then he shot Larkins close to his heart at point-blank range. That evening, the man passed away, and Mbridge was taken into custody. When a journalist approached Mbridge the next day, he appeared to be in a good mood. He said he was treated well by the authorities, and that he had a positive influence on the other prisoners since he stopped bullying and harassment and reprimanded swearing. He claimed to have no remorse, and that he thought males of his family would understand his decision to kill his wife's boyfriend. He was composed as he described his plan to kill Larkin. The trial for Mbridge started on February 18, 1975. Due to the photographer's altered behavior following a brain injury sustained in a bus accident in 1860s, his attorney entered a not guilty by reason of insanity frantic person who frequently erupted into violence. While Mbridge maintained throughout the trial that his acts were planned and purposeful, he frequently showed uncontrollably strong emotional outbursts that supported the defense team's case. In addition, the defense team claimed that Major Larkins was a dishonest guy who boasted to his friends about having seduced Flora. They said that Mbridge's deception had driven him frantic with rage and that the photographer was driven solely by his love for his wife. The love letters were admitted into evidence, and the nurse who possessed them was also questioned on the witness stand. Ultimately, Mbridge was found not guilty due to justifiable homicide, despite the fact that adultery was not a legal defense for murder. Moreover, the jury was expressly instructed by the judge that Larkins was not entitled to enforce the law on his own, even in the event that he had successfully wooed Flora. The jury had 4 possibilities to select from when deciding on the verdict and the appropriate sentence. Not one of these solutions included a murder that was justified. Despite this, the jury contended that their decision was consistent with human nature, even if it did not follow the law. They said it was impossible to punish someone for acting in a way that they themselves would probably act in a like situation. Following his acquittal, Mbridge carried on with his regular life. He took a prearranged vacation to Central America where he concentrated on his photography for 9 months after leaving the U.S. On December 14, 1874, Flora filed for divorce, citing severe cruelty as the reason, but her petition was denied. Although her second appeal was granted, she passed away unexpectedly in July of 1875. While paying for Florido's upkeep and arranging for his transfer from a Catholic to a Protestant orphanage in 1876, Mbridge did not spend much time with him. As an adult, he supposedly resembled Mbridge exactly. Florido was a gardener and ranch hand who was struck by a car in 1944 and died in Sacramento. In 1904, Mbridge passed away from cancer upon his retirement to his Surrey, England, hometown. Brian Schaefer. As a medical student at Ohio State University, Brian was in his second year of study. Previously, he completed his undergraduate studies at Ohio University, where he earned a degree in microbiology. He continued his education at Ohio University. Throughout his entire life, he had a very stable relationship not only with his parents but also with his long-term partner. Despite the fact that his mother had passed away from cancer a few months prior to Brian's disappearance, his friends made the assertion that his mother's passing was not a factor in his disappearance. In addition, he intended to pop the question to his girlfriend later that year, most likely during a vacation to Miami that the couple had scheduled for their spring break. The celebration of the forthcoming spring vacation was something that Brian and his father got together for on March 31, 2006. After some time had passed, his father recalled that Brian appeared fatigued as a result of an all-nighter that he had pulled earlier that week. It was around 9 o'clock. On the same evening, Brian went to the Ugly Tuna Salona, which is a seafood restaurant and bar located in the South Campus Gateway complex. There, he met his friend William Florence. That evening, Brian and William went out and visited a number of different drinking facilities, also known as bar hopping. Around midnight, they came face to face with Meredith Reed, who was a friend of William's. As they made their way back to the Ugly Tuna Salona, where they had begun the evening, she provided them with a ride. It was during their time there that Brian became separated from his friends. Both Meredith and William made numerous attempts to locate him by phoning him on the phone. They exited the bar at approximately 2 in the morning and waited outside for Brian. They presumed that Brian had returned to his apartment because he was not present among the group of people who were leaving. And yet, he was never seen or heard from again. The fact that the Ugly Tuna Salona is a bar located on the second floor and has a surveillance camera facing the only entrance and exit is a peculiar aspect of this establishment. An investigation into the footage was carried out by the police, and they discovered a point in which the 3 companions entered the bar. Additionally, Brian was captured on camera bidding farewell to 2 women as they exited the bar, and the accompanying film also captures him returning to the establishment just a few seconds later. Exactly, that is it. Nobody ever sees or hears from Brian Schaefer again after some time has passed. It appears as though he vanished while he was in the bar because there is no evidence that he left the establishment afterwards. The fact that the camera that monitors the only entry and exit did not record Brian leaving the bar continues to be a mystery to the investigators. Moving on to the next case. Kevin Shoalter. A college student named Kevin Shoalter, who was 20 years old at the time, and his girlfriend were traveling through New London, Connecticut, on the evening of Christmas Eve in 1973. Kevin was compelled to arrive at a stop because their automobile experienced a flat tire. In addition, as he was in the process of replacing the tire, he was hit by a vehicle that was passing by. The location of Kevin's death was less than 2 blocks away from his residence. In the beginning of the investigation, the focus was on Harvey Malove, who had previously served as the mayor of New London. Due to the fact that he had driven past the area at the time of Kevin's death, he was deemed a possible suspect. However, his testimony contradicted the statements of eyewitnesses. In spite of the fact that a single-member grand jury came to the conclusion that he was the most likely offender, there was not sufficient evidence to press criminal charges against him. Malove maintained his innocence throughout the investigation as well as after it was completed. An individual by the name of Paul Hansen, on the other hand, came forward in 1979 to admit that he was the one who did the crime. At that moment, the statute of limitations had already run its course, which is one of the likely explanations for why Hansen was not charged with any crime. An additional jury was called for the investigation. Nevertheless, they came to the conclusion that there was no evidence to back up Hansen's claim. And as a result, the investigation was terminated. From the time that Paul Hansen committed suicide at 2 p.m., the investigation remained unsolved. Through the note that he left behind, he asserted once more that he was responsible for Kevin's passing. Despite the fact that the police agency made the decision to reopen the investigation, the fact that the 3,000-page transcript from the initial investigation had inexplicably vanished was a peculiar occurrence. To this day, the circumstances surrounding Kevin Shoalter's passing remain officially unresolved. This was only a cover-up for the poor work that the police had done. It appears as though we will never find out. Moving on to the next case. Carolyn Celeste Eaton, previously identified as Valentine Sally. Around 11 miles west of Williams and next to the Monte Carlo truck stop, on Valentine's Day in 1982, an Arizona Department of Public Safety officer conducted an investigation in the vicinity of the westbound lane of Interstate 40. Not so long ago, there was an event that resulted in a car tire being missing. Its retrieval had been the officer's responsibility to ensure that no mishaps occurred. To his surprise, however, the officer discovered beneath the cedar tree front of him, 25 feet from the interstate, something other than a misplaced tire. It was a human body. Something other than a misplaced tire. It was a human body. Beneath the tree, a young woman, perhaps an older teenager, was found partially nude. She was still wearing her blue jeans from Seasons, but there was a red and white striped jumper and her bra nearby. She only had her clothes and a handkerchief as personal things, and she did not have any identification with her. Jane Doe was a blonde who had piercings in her left lobe, a scar on one leg, and scars on her left foot. The decay and the fact that animals had started chewing on her carcass made it impossible for investigators to establish if the piercings in her right ear were the same. Law enforcement concluded that Jane Doe had been dragged to the location where her body was discovered based on her belt loops. The medical examiner had a difficult time determining the cause of her death due to the condition of her remains, although it is thought that she was strangled. She is thought to have passed away between February 1st and February 6th. Just before she passed away, one of her bottom molars had been prepared for a root canal. Even so, witnesses report seeing her alive on the 3rd. Law enforcement launched an appeal for assistance from the public and started compiling a timeline of Jane Doe's final known movements. A North Arizona University student remembered driving north on February 2nd to pick up a teenager who fit her description. The girl said she was from Phoenix, where she worked as a dishwasher and lived with friends. But her trip to New Jersey had been triggered by some family matters. Her plan was to travel to Flagstaff in order to find a ride with a long-haul trucker to the East Coast. When investigators conducted staff interviews at the Monte Carlo truck stop in Ash Forks, they came upon Patty Wilkins, a restaurant employee whose family owned the business. She remembered meeting a female early on February 3, 1982, who looked similar and had blue eyes. The man she was with at the time was older, and Patty assumed he was either her grandfather, her uncle, or the teenager's father because he might have been in his 60s. Witnesses claimed that the man voiced worry about her teeth. When Patty recalled, the restaurant employee had given Jane Doe baby aspirin, which the adolescent had stuck on her bottom molar, in response to her request for painkillers. Patty estimated that the adolescent was between Jane Doe seemed to be very at ease with the older man, and she thought they were happy. The two left the truck stop 1 hour after they arrived, at around 3 in the morning. Sadly, no one remembered the type of truck or car the girl got into when she drove off. Jane Doe reportedly said that she was eager to go with the man when Patty asked the adolescent if she was okay and if she wanted to go with him. The man the adolescent was with was characterized as medium weight, white, and standing between 5'8" and 5'10". He had on a felt cowboy hat with a big peacock feather at the front and a vest made of two-tone brown checkered leather. After leaving the truck stop in Monte Carlo, Jane Doe was, as far as we know, never seen alive again. When detectives arrived to interview with Patty Wilkins and the other staff members, she knew right once who her jumper was. 2 years later, in 1984, Melody Cutlip, a young lady who vanished from Florida in 1980, was mistakenly identified as Jane Doe. Upon discovering Melody's missing persons reports, a lieutenant at the Coconino County Sheriff's Office became suspicious that the two females were one and the same. He got in touch with a forensic odontologist in 1984 in an attempt to compare the two using their dental records. By comparing Melody's dental records with Jane Doe's teeth bite marks, the odontologist was able to match the two. His techniques were usually regarded as unreliable and lacking in scientific soundness. Since Melody's mother didn't think the remains belonged to her missing child, she declined to have them sent to Florida. Interestingly, Melody went back home in 1986. An automobile accident in Louisiana 12 years later claimed her life. Jane Doe was buried in a Williams, Arizona cemetery, and Patty Wilkins covered the cost of her interment. Later on, Melody Cutlip with Valentine Sally beneath was etched on her headstone. Melody's name was on the headstone for a while, even after it was established that the two were not the same person, in spite of her family's repeated demands for it to be taken down. With assistance from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, the Arizona Department of Public Safety, and a private genealogy company, the Coconino County Sheriff's Office declared in early 2021 that they had identified Jane Doe. Carolyn Celeste Eaton, 17, was identified as the missing person. She disappeared from St. Louis, Missouri, around Christmas of 1981. Carolyn was born on October 1, 1964. After an argument of some kind at home, she apparently fled away. But it seems that her family never submitted a missing persons report. There isn't a lot of information available on the internet regarding Carolyn's early years or her escape from her family. There are also not many theories in her case. Most people agree that she was slain by the man she was traveling with after she rejected his advances, with many internet sleuths speculating that she was killed in retribution. But according to armchair detectives, Royal Russell Long is the primary suspect. Long had a history of severe sexual assault, was convicted of kidnapping, and was a dangerous criminal and possible serial killer. He was even charged with molesting by his own daughter before he passed away in prison in 1993. In 1984, he entered a guilty plea to a charge of kidnapping related to the disappearance of Sharon Bald Eagle. Additionally, he is suspected of being involved in the disappearances of Deborah Mayer and Carleen Brown in 1974 in Wyoming. The most well-known connection to Long may be from his alleged role in the abductions of two 13-year-old girls from the Oklahoma State Fair in September 1981. Together, Cinda Pallett and Charlotte Kinsey went to the fun fair. Afterwards, Charlotte called her parents to inform them that both of them had received offers to work helping a fairground employee unload toys from a truck. As long as she called home again by 9 o'clock at night, her mother would let her start the job. Long, who worked as a long-haul truck driver and a funfair employee at the time, matched the suspect sketch in this case quite a bit, thanks to the assistance of eyewitnesses. That evening, the same offer was made to a number of additional teens, but none of them accepted to assist. Long was accused of robbing both daughters of their lives. Although he acknowledged being at the fair that evening, he denied having anything to do with the disappearances. The day before, he had driven a flatbed trailer to a nearby company and landed in the region. In addition to Cinder's hair, many animal hairs that were identified as belonging to various dogs and a cat that she had interacted with before going missing were found in his car. Moreover, there were bloodstains discovered within the car. Nevertheless, it was impossible to tell if they were animal or human. And in Long's house, a blonde hair strand was found. Once more, however, it was never positively matched to Charlotte. The majority of the physical evidence, the testimony of Long's daughter, and the testimony of a boy who had been approached by Long the night Cinder and Charlotte vanished were all excluded from consideration by the presiding judge in the case against Long in December of 1985. The accusations against him were therefore dropped. Even now, both girls remain missing. Many people have assumed that the man Carolyn was traveling with was lengthy based on Patty Wilkins' description of him. He was frequently spotted sporting his highly unusual felt hat with the feather in the front. By calling 928-226-5012, you can reach the Coconino County Sheriff's Office if you know anything regarding Carolyn's murder. Moving on to the next case. Kimberly King. Kimberly Kim Alice King, then 12 years old, was regarded by her loved ones as an adventurous, fun-loving, and brave risk-taker. Annie Godbounce, who had been her best friend since 4th grade, lived across the street from her in Warren in the autumn of 1979 and was among the last persons to see her before she vanished. Kim informed her folks that she would be staying over at Annie's house, and they spent a portion of September 15th together. But instead, Kim climbed over the fence in Annie's backyard and waved goodbye, heading out in the hopes of running into her sister as evening descended and the sky got dark. Kathy King never showed up for the movie date that the two had scheduled. She couldn't reserve the car for the evening, and as her father didn't have a phone at his Waterford house, she was unable to inform her sister that she wouldn't be able to make it. Kim, still in Warren, made the decision to go to 11 Mile, a well-liked hangout for teenagers and preteens at the time, which is situated near Roseville, Michigan. Kim would frequently hitchhike her way to the area because she enjoyed visiting there. She hoped Kathy would show up so they could spend the evening together. Naturally, though, Kathy never made it there either. Annie claimed that Kim would frequently stay out late and leave covertly without her grandparents noticing. She wasn't particularly troublesome, but she did enjoy going on excursions and had a hint of mischief. Furthermore, this was not the first time the 12-year-old had made up an address. She had apparently previously thought of a similar scheme and showed up at Annie's door at 7 in the morning. Annie, on the other hand, defined herself as more of a spectator in life, content to let her best friend enjoy all the fun instead of getting involved herself. That evening, Kim gave her other sister, Connie, a call between 11 and 1. Kim said she was at a neighboring phone box, just down the road from her grandparents. When asked where she was, Kim promised to go to Annie's house or come home when Connie, worried for her younger sister, told the 12-year-old to do so, but she never did. Annie waited till the wee hours of the morning for her best friend to arrive and was upset when she didn't. Later that morning, she got a call asking her to tell Kim's worried grandmother where Kim was. Annie admitted to her that she didn't know and gave her account of what had occurred the night before. The police were called to the scene within the next few hours. Investigators initially thought that 12-year-old Kim had fled on her own initiative. They assumed Kim shared the same mindset and temperament because her sister Kathy had a history of running away. But Kim's family and Annie didn't think she would just up and leave, noting that even though Kim liked to sneak about and have fun, she would never leave her loved ones in the dark about anything. Despite her assertion that she was using one on the corner close to her grandparents' house. Neither booth's phone records were ever removed, and the little girl's whereabouts could not be monitored by any neighboring CCTV. Nearly every member of the local community was questioned about Kim's disappearance, both formally by the government and informally by friends and relatives. The adolescent sisters were informed that their siblings had arrived in Roseville, but it's clear what she did next. No one knew where she had disappeared to, and no one had seen her go. Investigators received tips that resulted in interviews, but no more. Additionally, after she vanished, investigators discovered that she might have visited Grand Rapids, Michigan. However, this lead was not fruitful. The authorities quickly reached a dead end. Law police initially thought that Kim vanished because of the Oakland County child killer, an unnamed serial killer who killed 4 children between the ages of 10 and 12 in 1976 and 1977. Before they were killed, the victims of the offender were kept captive for a few days. Kim matches the description of many of the killer's victims, but if her case is one of his, it would be unusual because the murderer frequently leaves his victims unnoticed by hiding them on the side of the road. On the other hand, neither Kim nor her remains have ever been located. David Norberg is another person of interest in the Kim and Oakland County child killers cases. In 1979, Norberg worked in Warren and resided just 2 streets away from the 12-year-old. Norberg has never been prosecuted with any of the kid homicides or anything to do with Kim's disappearance. He was killed in an automobile accident in 1981 near Recluse, Wyoming. But after he passed away, his house contained jewelry that was purportedly owned by a number of the child killer's victims. When his body was excavated in 1999, his DNA was linked to a hair strand discovered on the corpse of Timothy King, the last victim of the child killer. But 3 years later, officials declared that the hair did not match Norberg. It's unknown if Norberg had anything to do with Kim's disappearance or was the murderer. Even though he is not the serial killer, investigators think he may have been involved in the kidnapping of the 12-year-old. Arthur Ream is a man who was the third suspect in the case against Kim. This announcement was made in 2018 after investigators re-examined her disappearance. Ream was found guilty in February 2008 of killing 13-year-old Cindy Tsarichki, a young girl who had vanished about the same time in 1986, while dating his son. Ream pretended to be planning a surprise party for his son in order to entice Cindy to a dairy cream shop in East Point. Afterwards, he kidnapped her, killed her, and buried her body some 30 miles outside of Detroit. He guided detectives to this spot after being charged with the crime in order to retrieve Cindy's remains. Ream was already serving a 15-year sentence in prison at the time for abusing a 14-year-old girl. In addition, he served time in prison from 1974 to 1978 after being found guilty of sexually abusing a 15-year-old. In an effort to find other victims, investigators excavated the spot where Ream had buried Cindy in 2018. They'd heard that while he was inside, he boasted of having killed 46 other people. Despite not finding Kim's remains, law enforcement was certain that Ream had buried his other victims close by. Ream does not seem to have confessed to authorities about Kim's case or any of the other crimes he is thought to be involved in thus far. Since 2018, there haven't been many updates. Kim's sisters are still searching for answers despite the death of their grandmother in 1995. Annie is hoping that someday they will be able to come to a true understanding. Kim's grandmother bought her a burial plot before she passed away. The last time 12-year-old Kimberly Alice King was seen was on September 15, 1979, when she left her best friend Annie's Warren home. She might have been at the Roseville, Michigan vicinity of 11 Mile after this. She talked on the phone with one of her sisters from 11 to 11:30 p.m. Never again have we seen or heard from her. Kimberly is characterized as a 5'5" Caucasian woman with blue eyes and blonde hair. When she was last seen, she weighed about a pound 105 and was dressed in trousers and a blue sweater. She goes by Kim, and her upper front teeth are spaced apart. It is said that her upper incisor is peg-shaped. Kim will be 55 years old if she survives. You can call the Warren Police Department at 586-574-4700 if you know anything about her disappearance or location. Moving on to the next case. Christina Morris. Christina Morris paid a visit to a high-end shopping center in Plano, Texas, on the August 30, 2014. In order to commemorate the beginning of the Labor Day weekend, she got together with her close pals. It was here that she became acquainted with a man whose name was Enrique Orochi. Despite the fact that they had both graduated from Allen High School, they did not have a strong relationship with one another. A common buddy was the one who brought them together. Christina is seen in this surveillance footage strolling with a man in the direction of the garage of the shopping center, which is where her vehicle was parked. We were dealing with Enrique. On the other hand, they were not coming back from the shopping center. Rather, they were coming back from an apartment where the group had ended up that evening. Orochi made the decision to leave the flat at approximately 3:30 in the morning, and Christina stated that she would accompany him on his walk to their automobiles, which were still parked in the garage of the shopping mall, which was located a few blocks away. Enrique and Christina are seen walking side by side in the video security footage around 3:55 in the morning. There are no indications contained within the video that anything is wrong. On the other hand, 3 minutes later, a rookie Camaro is observed exiting the garage, and Christina is never seen again after that. The Toyota Celica that she had been driving was discovered in the garage 3 days after her father had reported her missing. In a short amount of time, it was discovered that Enrique was the last person to see Christina alive. It was multiple times that the Plano police interviewed him. Both the fact that their vehicles were not parked in the same garage and the fact that Christina had gone missing were both things that he claimed he was unaware of. In addition, forensic professionals discovered Christina's DNA on the opening of the car trunk, as well as on a mat that was located inside the trunk, despite the fact that Enrique's vehicle looked to be clean when it was investigated by the police. During the time that Enrique and Christina were making their way into the parking garage, it was also discovered that Enrique had called Christina's relationship partner, It was eventually discovered that Christina's boyfriend was actually a drug dealer who had previously been sentenced to 33 months in federal prison for distributing MDMA, often known as ecstasy or Molly, to undercover agents. This information was discovered some months after the initial discovery. On the September 30th, 2016, Enrique Roque was found guilty of kidnapping Christina Morris and was sentenced to life in prison for his crime. However, given that Christina's body has never been located, it is possible that this mystery will never be solved. Enrique continues to insist that he is not guilty. Moving on to the next case. In the opening moments of our story, we step into the heartwarming world of Shanti Cooper Drones and Dave Drones. Their smiles radiated the joy of newlyweds, basking in the warm glow of their love. It was a time when dreams danced in their eyes, and the future held the promise of endless tomorrows. A snapshot of a life filled with dreams and laughter. In 2015, Dave Drones discovered his dream home. A charming house adorned with a fascinating gargoyle, located in the upscale neighborhood of Delaney Park in Orlando. The house was beautiful. It was 4,000 square feet. It had a pool, a garage apartment. They sought to infuse a modern aesthetic into the interior as the house originally boasted an older Victorian style. It didn't take long for Dave and his new wife, Shanti Cooper, to embark on their own remodeling journey. Dave just called me on the phone and asked if I'd come by and take a look at the project. He said that they had done some work. A local contractor says, "I wasn't at all prepared for what I saw when I got there. They had fully disassembled this house to a degree that I'd never seen before. It was rather astonishing. It was largely wide open, like you're inside of a giant shoebox." This house became more than just a project to David Drones. It was his life. He obsessed on it. But as we dig deeper into their story, we discover a different side. This house is the center point to the story and ultimately led to Shanti's demise. Former prosecutor Ryan Vescio says the story began in the late afternoon of April 24, 2018. Dave placed an emergency call to 911. "Hello?" And David says that he came home and found Shanti floating in the bathtub. "My wife I saw her. Why is she stopped feeding?" The question arises, does that story make sense? Absolutely not. Shanti was extensively beaten. It makes me emotional. I feel bad for her family and for her son. It's upsetting that she won't get that life with him. Upon the arrival of first responders, tragedy struck as Shanti Cooper's life came to a tragic end at the tender age of 39. It became abundantly clear that right from the outset, Dave Drones was a person of interest in this somber tale. Absolutely. Dave was asked to go to the station, thank you, and voluntarily remained there for hours. And he just started getting confronted and confronted and confronted. He did not request counsel. He consented to swabs, to clippings, to a search of his person. Dave went into that interview with an agenda. Think about where you want to be in the future. You still have a future. Now is your opportunity to make it the best it can be. Do you want to elaborate on that? What do you mean? You still have a future. You still have a life to live. You're still breathing. You're a young man. You still have the rest of your life to live. I can't tell you what's going to happen to you. I don't know because you're not telling the truth. I can tell you that she's a lead detective in this. And if you maintain this BS, she has one choice to go with. I told you she was murdered. And it became a war of wills in that room. I didn't have any explanation for her, the severity of her interest. Seems Dave was not broken. And didn't Dave win that war of wills? Well, Dave didn't confess. Seems pretty clear. These two detectives, they went into this room, decided that David was a murderer, and then went the extra mile to try to put a file together to prove such. Did you guys get into an argument? Was she about the house? The question arises again. Is it possible that without this house, Shanti might still be alive? I think that's completely true. This is the most chilling case you've ever heard. But before we go further, let me take you back to the beginning. Shanti Cooper, a successful businesswoman born in 1979, had a son named Jackson Cooper from her first marriage with James Cooper. While not much is known about their marriage, things took a sour turn due to James's violent nature, leading to their divorce in February 2013. Determined to create a better life, Shanti packed up her things and moved with Jackson to the vibrant city of Orlando. There, she continued working from the comfort of her own home, pouring her heart and soul into being the best single mother she could be. While Shanti showered Jackson with love and happiness, deep down, she longed for a life partner who could share her journey and provide the fatherly love her son deserved. In March 2013, in the pursuit of love, Shanti took a leap of faith and joined Match.com, a dating site where destiny awaited her with open arms. There, Shanti crossed paths with a man named Dave Trotz from the distant land of Minnesota. Like Shanti, he was recovering from the aftermath of a divorce from his ex-wife Carol, whom he'd married in 1999. He too yearned for a life partner to share his joys and sorrows. Despite being separated by miles, their connection blossomed through heartfelt letters and late-night phone calls. Surprisingly, in a short span of time, they grew incredibly close and decided to embark on a new relationship together. After just 5 months, in September 2013, Dave made a bold move and relocated from Minnesota to Orlando to be with Shanti and her son. It was a beautiful time for Shanti as she found happiness and companionship in Dave's presence, filling her heart with joy. However, in April 2015, a significant change came into their lives when Dave decided to purchase a stunning 4,000-square-foot house in Delaney Park. This neighborhood was known for its elegance and was conveniently located just a mile away from downtown Orlando. Dave bought the house outright using his own money that he'd accumulated through his past successes in business and real estate. They both instantly fell in love with the neighborhood and the house itself. However, they wanted to give the interior a much more modern touch since the house had an older Victorian style. Together, they agreed that Shanti would take charge of funding the renovations to transform the house into their dream home, since Dave bought the house with his own money. It was an exciting project that they embarked on as a team, bringing their unique ideas and vision to life. But here's where things took an unexpected turn in their story. The renovation project wasn't just about sprucing up the house. There was something more to it. As time went on, their lives started to become more complicated. Despite the challenges, they decided to tie the knot and got married on February 22, 2017. However, after the wedding, the renovation project spiraled out of control. They completely stripped down the interior of the house, and Shanti had already paid a whopping $250,000. The end seemed nowhere in sight, and the house had turned into a chaotic construction zone. It became unbearable to live in, so they had to temporarily move into a small apartment above the garage, leaving the main house behind. It was a frustrating and challenging time for Shanti, and their once happy family life was now disrupted. That's when everything changed dramatically on April 24, 2018 at around 4 p.m. It was during this moment that Dave made a fateful call to 911, setting the stage for a whole new chapter in our story. Hello? And David says that he came home and found Shanti floating in the bathtub. My wife is, I just saw her. Why is she not feeling? We've explored her life, delved into her past, and now we're about to enter the crime scene. After the 911 call, the police arrived at East Copeland Drive in about 20 minutes and met 47-year-old Dave Trotz, the person who made the call. When he saw the police, he couldn't hold back his tears and started crying. The police found the lifeless body of 39-year-old Shanti Cooper in the living room, but the reasons behind her death remained mysterious. As they delved deeper into the investigation, they uncovered unsettling evidence. Marks on her neck that raised suspicion and traces of blood scattered throughout the house. Among the evidence, what caught their attention was the unusual behavior of Dave during their conversations with him. He seemed to switch between different emotions when discussing his wife's death, which raised suspicions. However, these were only initial observations, and the police needed more information to understand what had happened. They asked Dave to come to the police station for questioning, reassuring him that it was just a routine part of the investigation. The police hoped this would help them gather more clarity about the situation. At this time, Dave had the option to say no because he was not being arrested. However, he willingly decided to go to the Orlando Police Department for questioning. After knowing the crime scene, get ready to be captivated as we dive into the chilling interrogation. Stay tuned and watch closely. It's about to get intense. The detectives would start their investigation by gathering and analyzing all the evidence found at the house and by talking to Dave. Their initial priority was to build a rapport with Dave, which meant creating a connection and making him feel supported. The purpose was to ensure that Dave felt comfortable and didn't choose to exercise his right to remain silent or his right to ask for a lawyer. Establishing this connection is crucial in any interrogation because it encourages the suspect to share all information willingly. Hi, I'm Detective Sprague. Can I get your first name? First name is David. David? Okay. We're gonna grab another chair. Okay. Did you need something? I was just asking for a follow-up while okay. So he's ready. Do you ever know about your name? I just want you just want? Okay. How about anything else? Anything else? It's been starving a cracker or just something just a result. Right? Just something simple. Just play a result team or a piece of crackers. Anything like that? Yeah. That's not a problem. We'll be right back. And is there anything else we can get you? Okay. All right. Okay. I'm looking at things. Okay. Is that good? Okay. All right. I with you. I haven't eaten since this morning. I'm sorry this is taking so long. You are David, I believe. Okay. All right. I'm Detective Teresa Sprague, and this is Detective Harvey Holland. Hey. First of all, on behalf of the Atlanta Police Department, we want to say how sorry we are for your loss, David, and also for everything that you're going through. I know this is very traumatic for you. Okay. This emotional outburst seemed odd when considering the timeline. Such a reaction could be genuine, but it occurred about 5 hours after the 911 call, making it less typical for an innocent person to accept the situation outright. Normally, they might show signs of denial or confusion. Moreover, Dave's reaction appeared prompted by the detective's statement, which didn't make sense since he already knew what had happened hours ago. This raised doubts about the authenticity of his concerns, and it almost felt like a fake display of emotions, not typical of genuine human reactions. It's essential to understand that unusual body language or reactions don't necessarily mean guilt. They require careful analysis. We'll analyze the situation, but we won't jump to conclusions without solid evidence, as the real reason behind the unusual behavior may be revealed later in the video. And it's just a terrible, terrible thing. So what time is it? You know? It is 21:15. 15? Okay. All right. And I know you've been waiting a long time. We've just obviously had a lot to do, just trying to figure out what's going on here. Okay. And we need your help doing that. Okay. Of course. Can we just, and if you need to take a break, you tell me. Okay. If you need anything at all, you let me know. Okay. Okay. We appreciate your patience. I know you've been in this suit, and I can get you some clothes as well. But you understand why we need to do what we needed to do. Of course. Of course. And we want it. My understanding is that you've been very cooperative. So we just need to we need you, or we gotta figure this out together. Okay. Of course. What is your first name? Is your first name David? Is David, M for Michael. Tronnes. Tronnes. Okay. And what is your date of birth? 06/2968. Okay. How tall were you, David? 6'2". Okay. And how much do you weigh? 195. Okay. Blonde or brown hair? Little. Okay. Okay. Hazel wise, maybe? Take hazel. Blue hazel. Okay. They're dirty. Yeah. Okay. Just 90 seconds ago, Dave was deeply distressed and crying uncontrollably over his wife's death. Now he was suddenly chuckling and engaging in friendly banter with the detective, even sharing a genuine smile as he talked about his eye color. This quick shift in emotions is not typical of a traumatized suspect, as it's unusual for someone who just experienced a tragic loss to display such contrasting behavior. In the next 60 seconds, you'll witness the emotional switches that were mentioned earlier. Dave went from being calm to suddenly appearing deeply distraught, and then back to being calm again, all within a short span of time. These abrupt changes in emotions suggest that he might be trying to force an emotional reaction that didn't come naturally. In contrast, genuine emotions are less likely to show such drastic shifts. With the addition of visual cues from the video, we now have more information to make a better judgment about Dave's true feelings during the interrogation. Oh, he was 2013. Okay. Did you meet her here or there? No, not mine. No, not mine. Okay. I'm sorry. Take your time. I'm so sorry. Can you tell me what year that was? It was 2013. 2013 is when you met online? Yeah. Okay. And about 5 minutes later, did you move here and move in with her or just move here? So I'm trying to be as accurate as possible. I believe it was the September. My mom moved out. So you guys knew each other approximately 5 years this month? There's never been more lovers, so happy. Okay. At this moment, the detective felt assured about the rapport she'd established with Dave, whether his emotional outburst was genuine or not. It was the right time to move the conversation towards getting him to talk more openly. She proceeded to read him his rights before continuing with the interrogation. Obviously, we don't know what happened in your home today. Okay. We don't know what happened to Shanta yet. We know you called us, which is good. Okay. And we know that, obviously, she's lost her life. Okay. So we do need to you're not under arrest. Okay. I want you to understand that. Okay. But we do need to read you your rights because you are in a police department with 2 detectives in this room and you've been here for quite some time. Okay. And I want you to understand that. We're just trying to figure out what happened to her. Okay. And so it's our job to do that, obviously. And we want to give you answers, her son answers. I mean, her family deserves that. Would you agree? Okay. Okay. So if you don't, I know you've probably never been through anything like this in your life. Okay. And I'm going to help you get through it. If you have questions you want to stop me, please do so. Okay. But I do need you to understand your rights before we ask you about anything that happened in that home today. Are you of the right to remain silent? Do you understand that? I'm sorry? Yes. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Anything you say may be used against you in court. Do you understand that? Yes. You have a right to talk to a lawyer before enduring questioning. Do you understand that? Yes. In this clip, you listen to Dave agreeing to talk after being read his rights. The most challenging part of the interrogation was over. The focus now was to let Dave speak as freely as possible. Any inconsistencies in his narrative would be carefully examined along with any evidence found at the house or on Shanti's body to piece together the truth of what had happened. In the next clip, you'll hear about the renovation project of the new house and how significant it was for Dave. But it turned out that Shanti struggled with it, and their marriage wasn't as idyllic as it appeared on the surface. I bought the house with cash that I have. We don't have a note, and I've used mostly my cash that I had saved from a career at 3.0 before I came here. A pretty successful long career, and I did well in real estate as well. So I came down here with about 800 or 900,000. And we bought the house for cash. Well, what did the house cost? $6.08. So that you guys own the house free and clear. Is your name only on it? Or was it both of yours? When we bought the house, we weren't married. And so we put it in a trust and we just completed the trust paperwork. End of last year, beginning of this year to put her name on the trust and slowly kind of migrate my mom, she's 82, off of it for financial reasons and estate planning reasons. I just paid more. Your mom's name was on the trust? Correct. Okay. And what was the reason for that? Was it you and your mom or just your mom? The reason was if anything would happen, we put our trailer in the trust as well. So it was a property trust for our family. And I'm an only child. And my father has been part of my life. So we've always done everything like that together. I've always taken care of her. Okay. She lives here? She does. Okay. Yeah. In the same area or complex that Shanti's grandmother lived in? Yeah. Okay. It's called Gulf Street Harbor. Gulf Street Harbor. In Hawthorne Road. Okay. So you started to put Shanti's name on the home at the end of last year, beginning of this year. Was that process completed or no? We got the trust documentation back from LegalZoom. We do all of our legal documents ourselves, and the only thing left to do is to notarize it. We weren't sure because she's also an only child, and Jackson is an only child. And we didn't know who to put if something happened to both of us. So we had kind of talked about it and debated it, and when we finally just said it doesn't really matter, let's just move forward. That's the most important thing. And then even after this, Shanti agreed to pay for the renovations, thinking that her contribution would make her an equal partner in the house ownership. However, her name was never added to the trust, meaning that if they were to separate, Shanti wouldn't be entitled to anything despite investing a lot of money in the renovations. In Florida, properties are divided equally in a divorce if they're considered marital property acquired during the marriage. But since the house was bought and put into a trust before they got married, it was considered non-marital property and wouldn't be divided equally in a divorce. Could be a coincidence that things happen this way, or it could raise questions about Dave's long-term plans for Shandy and the fairness of the property situation in their relationship. Paid where we have the money for the renovation in savings ready to go. We did a calculation on Saturday, I think it was, but we've always wanted to be country, so there's no way we could ever change some with the severe sleep apnea. One of the other things with the appendectomy and the nausea, all the stuff that is coming after the surgery. It's her sleep. Many times her sleeping has been difficult. When you said she's sleeping apnea, does she stop breathing? Does she snore? Does she have a CPAP? What do you? Oh, the above. She has a CPAP, but she doesn't use it, because she can't sleep with it. Keeps her awake. So she sleeps without it. But she swears a lot, and she wakes up frequently. So where would you sleep? I sleep downstairs. In the video clip, Dave mentioned that he slept downstairs to give Shanti and her son privacy when he came over, but also because Shanti snored. When Dave said he slept downstairs, he was actually referring to the garage, which seemed like an unusual choice unless there were other issues at play. The detective found this strange because the couple was renovating their house and the current living space was small, yet they didn't sleep together. This raised suspicion from the detective that there might have been pre-existing problems between Shanti and Dave before her death. In the next clip, the detective asked Dave about his recollection of the day he found Shanti dead. And how much? Is that what your recollection is? Okay. What time did you get there? I woke up before 7. All right. So you leave approximately 11:45. Take the dogs in the white Toyota RAV4 to the Park of Americas on Angeles so far? Yeah. Okay. Do you holler up? Text her? Tell her you're leaving any communication? I didn't. You didn't? So you're assuming she's home because the car is there. And you had already mentioned you were going to do this, so you did not communicate about that you were leaving. No, she knew. She knew. So in your mind she's there. No? When was the last time you had telephone text on a Facebook? Any sort of communication via phone with Shanta? The day before when she told me Jim was coming early to get Jackson. Now I'm concerned that she wasn't okay when I left. Now you're concerned she wasn't okay when you left? Talking about it's hard because you're asking me if we communicated and we were pretty efficient in the morning. She tells me, what she's got planned for the day. I tell her what I have planned. We work on it. We do our little morning strategy session and then it's who's gonna pick up Jackson and what time. So we race through our day to some degree to make sure that we get everything done. And okay. And I wish I would have taken the time to check on her. Okay. What? Okay. I'm gonna do it. So you think you made it to the park before the meeting or after? Just shortly after. Is anyone reaching you? Just the dogs. Just the dogs? Okay. Do you see anyone at the park that you know? I don't. Okay. There are only a couple of cars in the parking lot. I have 2 dogs, so I typically... Dave stated that he had no contact with Shanti throughout the day, which seems strange considering they live together. He mentioned that he simply woke up and didn't feel the need to check on his wife before going out with the dogs. The detective found this story puzzling as nothing seemed to add up. In the next clip, you'll notice that Dave went into excessive detail about irrelevant topics. This is a common tactic used by manipulators to overwhelm the listener with so much information that it becomes challenging to distinguish between facts and fiction. Such behavior can raise doubts about the truthfulness of the information provided. Forest and it's pretty gnarly, but there's a lot of unstable dogs and there's almost always fights. And there's a small dog area next to that. I tend to work the dogs there if there's nobody around in a lot of times. That's another reason for going that 10 days. There's usually very few people there. But there's a big field off of that between a little reservoir, I think it's a lake. It's just a little reservoir where they walk way around it. It has a big field between the playground, the lake, and the small dog park. And that's where I bring Charlie and Dawn. Okay. And so you kind of want to run, do their thing, enjoy the park. How long do you think you were there? We were working pretty hard. I think it was an hour, 45 minutes because I don't think I got home to it too. Did you have communication on your phone with anyone in that hour and 45 minutes? No. Did you text anyone? Call anyone? Were you on Facebook commenting, liking, posting? I don't do that. You don't do that? Okay. So you don't think you've reached your phone with you? I take I have a little blue cooler bag, and I could just put a phone in there, but I didn't text her cool any better. I missed that. You said you have a blue cooler bag? When I go, I take all my personal belongings and I put them in there. So I put the water bottle in there. I put the keys in there when I'm out in the park with the dogs gotcha. And my phone. And I usually bring a treat for the dogs. Okay. Reward treats for the dog. If a suspect is intentionally trying to show a specific emotion like grief, it becomes difficult for them to shift their focus while maintaining that emotion. Pretending to feel a certain way takes a lot of mental effort, making it hard to switch attention to other things and keep up the act. For instance, if someone is pretending to be sad, they might struggle to show that emotion while explaining complex details. On the other hand, if a person is genuinely distraught, their emotions will likely remain constant regardless of how much they need to focus on other things. Genuine emotions don't require conscious effort, making them more stable and reliable indicators of a person's feelings. During the interrogation, the detective asked an open-ended question about Dave coming back to the house. If Dave was innocent, he would probably focus on his wife, Shanti, as coming home to find a deceased loved one is highly traumatic. However, instead of discussing Shanti, Dave provided excessive details about irrelevant things like plans and upcoming construction projects. This diversion tactic suggests that he wanted to shift the attention away from Shanti. Notice the time it took for Dave to finally mention Shanti. I feed them. And Sunday I had moved a couple of plants and I went out to check on them because it had rained really, really hard last night. The bougainvillea in the driveway was when it rains heavy like that, it sags down so you can't drive in. So I took the cool brush on the end of a pole and I push it back to get it back up and then now it kind of locked in. We have construction starting in a couple weeks, so cleaning the courtyard in front of the greenhouse. I cleaned up some of the brombelia that I trimmed, put them in the waste basket. I put the pool pump on. I cleaned the pool out again. The lid leaves and scrubbed it. So you cleaned the pool twice and you fed the dogs twice. You fed them in the morning and you fed them again when you got home. And you cleaned the pool when you woke up and you clean it again when you got home. Okay. Anything else? As I said, I worked in the yard. I worked in the driveway. That was just what we call the courtyard. Anybody come by? No. Mailman, delivery folks, friends, neighbors. No? And no one came over? No. Okay. So you're out in front by that dumpster? Is that the quarry area? Yeah. That where we parked back in front of the garage door. That's the corner. With the cleaners that matter. And when you said you were cleaning the courtyard, what are your call doing? Theirs was a bunch of wood that, sent to my forest that's been sitting out there and some pieces of plywood that I had moved when it started raining. And there were a bunch of leaves that had fallen from the trees behind, not from ours, but from the other side of the wall. Basically our neighbor back there. So I had swept that up. I had done some of that on Sunday and I did probably another 20 or 30 minutes of that around the greenhouse in front of the vehicles back by the pallets. We were going to move the greenhouse so we could put a lumber pile in for framing. Back then, I was trying to figure out where it was going to move everything. Okay, so you think you worked in the yard until when? How many minutes do you believe that was? Hours? I would say less than an hour. We're close more than 45 minutes to an hour, somewhere in there. So you're closer to 3-ish? And it gets after 3. Okay. And then what do you do? That's all that I can remember until I went upstairs to see my movie production. So okay. When you enter the garage apartment. So, I could hear the water is running. It is not running. It's not like the sound of a shower is running. It's just it's trickling out of the spider. Which is weird because, the only time that she does that is, if she's going to take a shower, she would do that to heat the water heaters fixed to the outside of the main house. So it's a long run to get up to that bathroom. So I listen, because if she's on the phone with a work call, I don't announce myself. I just walk her upstairs. I didn't hear her. And I could hear the water. Couldn't hear her. I knew something was wrong. And that's when I remember what happened. That's when I saw it. Because you heard the water and didn't hear her, you felt something strong? That's what I really like. I went upstairs. I don't hear her talking on the phone. So I say hello. I don't hear anything bad. I can hear water running. She's not saying anything. Doesn't seem right. Sometimes it is hard if you have the water running to hear somebody out there, so that was my assumption. Okay. So it's one room. You don't see her? Until it's not the bathroom. Is the bathroom door open or closed? Open. Okay. And so you walk toward the water that you're hearing? Yeah. I walk in the bathroom. Okay. The door's open and what happens? What do you see? I see her laying with her head in the right-hand corner. The water is running. But I don't think the drain is closed because if it was, it would be going over right. So the water's like half full. She's submerged. In this clip, Dave sought approval for his version of events as if it wasn't a straightforward matter. A truthful suspect would typically state their version of events without seeking approval. Dave recalled the events as if he was asking a question, which is a sign of possible deception. But she's also partially not submerged, and one of her legs is kind of sticking up and out a little bit. And it's just extremely awful and it doesn't look natural. Obviously, she fell or something happened. She's stiff. It's hard. She's stiff? It's hard to pick her up. She's not, it's like a sack of potatoes, It's not easy. Just moving with me. I grabbed her arms and kind of pulled her this way, and over, I think partially onto her wrist. I'm just hoping that there's something I can do to help. I'm kind of moving here, trying to get her to shake her a little bit and trying to get the water out of her lungs. I got her in front of the couch and I had to stop and put her down, and I tried to lift her head up to kind of clear, I guess it's a thing you do if you're going to do CPR or something. And she's not responding. She's coming down her face and on the side of her body. And I'm still thinking I'm still hiding her head, his long hair are on it, and it looks like it's in the middle to me. There's a couple of settings. There's fully closed, right? So her hair is definitely wet, right? Yeah. Her clothing, her tank, and her shorts are wet. Yeah. And she's face down. So the first thing you do is what, if you recall? I reached out and touched her right arm. Do you recall where? How much time do you think elapsed with everything you attempted to do? I've been thinking about that. It probably seems that long. In this clip, things begin to unravel and become clearer. Dave claimed that when he returned home, he found Shanti deceased in the bathroom. He moved her to the living room and within 5 or 6 minutes he called 911. However, when the police arrived at the house about 20 minutes later, they noticed something odd. According to Dave's description, there should have been water everywhere, and Shanti's body should have been wet. But in reality, the entire house was dry, and there wasn't a single drop of water, not even on Shanti. This indicated that Shanti's body had been out for a long time, and the house had been meticulously cleaned. Struck you? Threw anything at you? No. No. Have you ever harmed her physically? No. Choked her? No. Strangled her? No. No. Have you ever strangled her or choked her during sex just for height and orgasm? Some couples do that. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Okay. Was there ever anything around her neck that you noticed during you removing her from the club or attempting CPR? Was there anything around her neck at all? No. Okay. No necklace. No. Nothing. Okay. Did you ever, if in your assessment of her or attempt to help, have your hand on her neck at all? Sure. Underneath, behind her head. Like that? To do the head tilt chin lift? Sure. And then also sort of feel for her pulse of the picture. Okay. Did you ever have your hand on her neck where you would have had to squeeze it for any reason? Possibly. In this footage, the detective mentioned strangulation to see how Dave would respond. The detective had access to the autopsy reports, which revealed that Shanti's cause of death was due to blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. She didn't drown. In fact, she'd been dead for hours before the investigators arrived. They found that one of Shanti's earrings was missing, and there was blood in the room. Additionally, there were no defensive marks on her body, leading the detectives to believe that she'd been preparing for bed the previous night when she was attacked and strangled to death. To make it appear as an accident, her body was left in the bathtub filled with water. What stood out in Dave's body language was his lack of resistance to these questions. On the same day he discovered his wife dead, an innocent suspect would likely not tolerate being subjected to such questioning. They would probably be furious at the audacity of the detective to ask such questions at such a sensitive time. First of all, you're not really sharing the same residence. You're kind of living downstairs. She's living upstairs with her son, but her son's not there. So even when her son's not there, you're still not sleeping together. You're not in the same residence. So during the J's, there's no more time, and I think whatever happened to her happened before you went to the park. Okay. Do you know how long it takes someone to get stiff? And I think you've left some stuff out. It is maybe something got out of hand. Maybe you didn't mean for it to happen. And when you came back and found her, it's pretty evident that she was deceased. Yeah. Cold, stiff, yeah. Significant swelling, yeah. And a lot of bloating. Great. Okay? So whatever happened between 7 and 9:30 to 9:45 is where I need you to be significantly more honest. Now if there's an explanation, I want to hear it. I ain't told you everything. Yeah. But you've left out something, David, because this woman has significant injuries. Okay. This is not in anywhere. Absolutely not. Did you choke her? Absolutely not. Did you strangle her? Without question, no. Did you beat her? No. Did you hit her with anything? Absolutely not. Okay. Do you have injuries? I do not. Anywhere? Did they photograph you, I assume? They did. Okay. Do you know if they photographed your chest or with or without? How do I pronounce your last name? Dave? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that Ronish? Ronish? Tron. Yes. Okay. At this point, the detective was certain that Dave was hiding something crucial, and it was time for a final confrontation. They left Dave alone for about 2 hours to increase the pressure after the initial confrontation. When the detectives returned, it was past 2 a.m. in the morning. This strategy of exhausting the suspect is commonly used because as physical and mental fatigue sets in, the suspect is more likely to make mistakes and may confess to escape the uncomfortable interrogation environment. Mentally, yeah. Oh, we got them calling. Just wanted to go over some of the points. I know I had more of an opportunity to ask questions than she is, so we wanted to it was part of your character of who you are by any means. But I know and you know that something happened there today that caused this because it didn't happen from a slip and fall in the bathtub. It didn't happen that way and you know that. And here's the thing. I would tell you I have never ever what you pick, but one of the two things happened. She didn't do this to herself and there was nobody else there. The detective used a common strategy by posing an alternative question to start unraveling the suspect's narrative. They suggested that an accident might have happened. And if the suspect were to confess to this possibility, then they would dig deeper and challenge if it was really just an accident. What are we supposed to think? What you're saying doesn't make sense. You're saying I don't know what happened to that. So when you pulled her out of the tub, you agreed with me that the water came out of the tub. There's not a spot of water on the floor, David. The carpet isn't wet. The carpet isn't wet from where she was pulled out of the bathtub, sopping wet all the way around to the front of the couch. The carpet's not wet. There's no blood on the carpet. Average person would think if you pull somebody who has been in a tub with long brown hair, who's bleeding in a rose-colored water in the tub, and you pull her out, water's gonna come splashing out on the floor. So please help us to understand, because if you maintain what you're saying right now, do you understand that it just looks like you just don't care? Okay. That's not like Scott Peterson, who killed Lacey Peterson, who's got 4 or 5 different girlfriends in 4 different states. Okay. I don't think that's who David is. I think David made a mistake. And I don't think David needs to pay as severely as someone like Scott Peterson. I think David needs to tell the truth. David's gonna feel better about that, and then we're gonna deal with what that truth is. And we're gonna be able to figure it out together. Okay. Right? That's not like Scott Peterson, who killed Lacey Peterson, who's got 4 or 5 different girlfriends in 4 different states. Okay. I don't think that's who David is. I think David made a mistake. who didn't really care for this woman, who didn't love her, who married her because maybe she had potential to make really good money or had some money, or maybe for the life insurance. Who knows? I mean, that's what people are gonna think. And that's what we're able to say, the truth. But it's one or the other. Dave, you either made a mistake or a cold Viking. Which one are you? Babe, isn't that a steak? You don't know that? Common sense would tell you if you pull a woman soaking wet out of the tub at 3 o'clock and call the police within 6 minutes, then everything will be soaking wet when the police arrive within 3 minutes of that. That's common sense. So how did everything dry out? That's our question. Because she wasn't pulled out at 3 o'clock. It didn't happen. There's a science behind evaporation, and that science is not matching. It's not matching. 3 o'clock. I can take a shower at 6:30 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night my towel's still wet. The shower even stays wet. That's the sliver of truth. There's blood in the water. There's another sliver of truth. I know you think you thought of everything, but you didn't. I don't think I thought of everything. I've told you over and over. I don't know. You do know. You have to stop saying you don't know because you do know. You do know anyway. You do know. You know exactly what happened because it was only you and her there. There was nobody else there. Because I'm telling you right now, nobody is gonna believe that. Nobody. Like as it's picked apart by everything you told us is picked apart by everyone who testified. And we haven't even hit on everything. We're ready, we're holding something back, waiting to hear the truth. People can be sympathetic when they hear people be honest and remorseful. They can be empathetic to a situation that gets out of hand. I can't tell you what's gonna happen to you. I don't know because you're not telling the truth. I can tell you that she's a lead detective in this. And if you maintain this BS, she has one choice to go with. The narrative I choose to write based on the facts that we know. Right? Whether it's true or not. But it's what we have. You don't want me to surmise what happened, do you? Just based on evidence, testimony? You want me to tell you truth? Or do you want to tell you truth? Because if I tell you truth, it's probably going to be first-degree premeditated, and I'll make you probably look like I am. I don't think that's fair, but you're not going to leave me a lot of choice. And then what happens? You face the music, which is, you face the music. You face the journey of your peers. You gotta understand. We're in control of the narrative here. You and I, Detective McConnell, are in control of the narrative here. We're gonna know the truth when we hear it. David, we've been doing this a really long time. Okay. We're gonna know the truth when we hear it. It's gonna match what we already know and solve this case. And I'm glad you think that's funny. I'm glad you think that's funny. I'm glad you think that's funny. Okay. Because every time you smirk and smile, okay, that's gonna be seen as well. And what do you think? What happened? What happened between you and her? The detectives tried to get a confession from Dave, but their efforts didn't work. They kept asking questions repeatedly, but Dave continued to insist that he was innocent. In the end, they had to stop the interrogation, and Dave was allowed to leave because nothing he said could be used against him. The detectives were not happy with the outcome since their main goal was to get a confession. However, this interrogation marked the beginning of the investigation into Dave as the primary suspect. In the following months after the interrogation, the investigators looked into other possible suspects. Shanti's ex-husband, Jim, was interviewed and asked about his whereabouts on April 24, 2018. He had a strong alibi, so he was ruled out as a suspect. The investigators also spoke to Shanti's friends who revealed that even though Dave bought the house, it was always Shanti who paid for everything, even the small expenses of running the house. Dave didn't contribute financially. After 2 months of investigation, the detectives discovered that Dave was a member of a place called Club Orlando, which is a same-gender bathhouse. A witness claimed to have seen Dave involved in activities with other men at the club. Shanti's friends and family strongly believed that she wouldn't have tolerated this, suggesting that Dave was leading a double life, hiding his actions from Shanti. During the search of their house, they found Shanti's engagement ring, which had been stolen months before in Dave's possession. This indicated that Dave was the one who stole it, and it raised suspicions about his intentions from the beginning. In addition, they found Shanti's diary, which confirmed her feelings of sadness, loneliness, and fear. expressing her desire to break free from the life she'd built. "I don't feel mentally healthy at this time, and a lot of the poor and unhealthy feelings are due to our interactions. I never feel like I do anything right. Unless I'm being perfect, I've ruined your day, your life. Another day of crying. Another day of being depressed and asking myself what I'm doing wrong. The answer is to be nice." In a note dated March 2016, Shanti had written a list of her complaints about Dave. She felt he was lying about being wealthy and never paid for anything. Even when it was his turn to pay for dinner, he'd claim he forgot his wallet. She was also unhappy about the ongoing renovations to their home, which forced them to live in the garage apartment. The letters found by the detectives supported their belief that money and problems with the house renovation might have been reasons for Dave to kill Shanti. Dave was eventually arrested 4 months later in August 2018 and charged with first-degree murder for the death of Shanti Cooper. The trial for Dave Trotz was scheduled to begin on February 3, 2020, but was delayed several times due to the COVID pandemic and health issues that David had. Finally, in January 2021, the trial started, and it was the first time Jackson, Shanti's son, saw Dave in person since his arrest. Jackson mentioned that Dave looked terrible and wasn't doing well. During the trial, both the defense and prosecution discussed Dave's mental state. They agreed that he was not mentally fit to proceed with the trial and recommended that he be committed for evaluation. The trial was delayed again and set for September 2023. Currently, Dave is still in prison waiting for his trial. Despite the delays, it's widely believed that Dave is responsible for Shanti Cooper's death, and he can't escape the consequences. The interrogation of Dave Trotz revealed a web of lies, deceit, and hidden secrets. As detectives skillfully peeled back the layers of Dave's narration, inconsistencies, and emotional switches, it painted a haunting picture of a potential murderer. It shows how important it is to conduct thorough and insightful interrogations in cases like this. What are your thoughts on this case? Was Dave Trotz really responsible in Shanti Cooper's murder? We'd love to hear from you. On July 26, 2015 at 6:08 p.m., a distressing 911 call was received from a resident of a Santa Cruz apartment complex in California. The caller's name was Laura Jordan. Her words were simple yet filled with dread. Her 8-year-old daughter, Madison Middleton, was missing. The young girl had last been seen around the complex just after 5 p.m. So what would really happen to that little girl? Let's find out. Santa Cruz is a coastal city in California that exudes a laid-back vibe and natural beauty. It's located between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. The city's population is around 62,000, fostering a tight-knit community that values sustainability and creativity. The city also boasts redwood-filled parks ideal for hiking and picnics. Art galleries, boutiques, and diverse cuisine add charm to its lively downtown. Whether you're a surfer, nature enthusiast, or culture lover, Santa Cruz promises an unforgettable California experience. And here our story begins. Madison Jordan Middleton, fondly known as Maddie, came into this world on October 5, 2006 in Santa Cruz County, California, USA. Her parents, Laura Jordan and Mike Middleton, raised her in the Tenry Arts Center apartment complex. Maddie's childhood was filled with joy. She found happiness in swimming, dancing, her passion for wolves, talking, and art. Her sense of humor was truly remarkable. "We called her Chatty Maddie," said Dan Middleton, Maddie's paternal grandfather. Maddie's friendly nature allowed her to make friends with everyone in the complex. Life was sailing smoothly, full of happiness, until an unforeseen tragedy struck. On Sunday, July 26, 2015, her mother Laura was playing a board game with a friend that came over. Maddie was waiting for them to finish, but then decided to put to good use a recently received gift, a white scooter. Dressed in a purple dress and sporting a black bicycle helmet, she rode the scooter around the courtyard. Throughout the afternoon, until the sun began to set at 4 o'clock, several neighbors caught glimpses of Maddie in the courtyard. Even after that, she was spotted a few more times riding around. Occasionally, she paused to chat with some of the other children, but she was also content being on her own. She had a lot of freedom to play where she felt comfortable, Laura said of her daughter. At around 5:07 p.m., the last known sighting of Maddie occurred near the mailboxes outside the ground floor parking garage. This was captured on video surveillance. Tragically, this became the final time anyone laid eyes on her. After this moment, Maddie inexplicably vanished. As the evening set in, Laura, Maddie's mother, started a desperate door-to-door search within the complex, but no one had any information about Maddie's whereabouts. Laura's concern grew even more. She couldn't find any trace of her daughter. She knew that Maddie was a confident child, but not want to wander off alone or engage with strangers. Feeling the urgency of the situation, Laura decided to involve the police. And at 6:08 p.m., she promptly made a 911 call to report Maddie missing. As the distress call reached the Santa Cruz Police Department, officers immediately responded to the situation. They flooded the Tannery Arts Center apartment complex and commenced their search for Maddie. They also circulated photos of the missing girl. The community soon rallied together with hundreds of volunteers, including friends, family, and even homeless Santa Cruzans, all joining forces to comb through the surrounding neighborhood. This wonderful kid, we would have heard her. She's I don't get this. Nobody gets this. We would have heard. She was just right here. All feeling a little helpless at this point. We've been checked all the tents in homeless camps. A lot of us have been up all night. We've gone as far as Paradise Park. From the river to the beach and the mountains that bordered the city, everyone was determined to find Maddie. Realizing the urgency, the sheriff's office search and rescue team was called in that same evening to lend their expertise. Additionally, a specially trained search and rescue K-9 unit from the State Office of Emergency Services joined the effort. Throughout the late hours of Sunday, the Santa Cruz Police Department, along with allied agencies, remained on alert. Detectives followed up on every lead, leaving no stone unturned. Despite their exhaustive search, no significant breakthroughs were made. Given the seriousness of the situation, the Santa Cruz Police Department also reached out to the FBI for additional assistance. In a matter of hours, the FBI responded by deploying a team of agents and resources to support the search for Maddie. The combined efforts of local law enforcement and federal agents intensified, all with the hope of finding Maddie and reuniting her with her family. On Monday, July 27, 2015, the Santa Cruz Police Department, FBI personnel, and search and rescue teams from Santa Cruz County and nearby counties continued their search efforts. Approximately 50 FBI agents conducted a thorough door-to-door search within the tannery complex, while Santa Cruz detectives meticulously checked trash cans and requested residents to open their vehicles in the tannery parking garages. By 11 a.m. that morning, the Santa Cruz police officially classified Maddie's disappearance as a missing person case. We're not calling this a kidnapping. We're still early on in our investigation. What we're calling it, we're looking for a lost child. Approaching the 24-hour mark since she went missing, the police decided to shift their focus back to the apartment complex itself, and so a more comprehensive and intensive search of the buildings commenced. At 7:55 p.m. on July 27th, their search came to an end when Maddie's lifeless body was discovered in a bag inside a recycling bin located in the first-floor garage of the apartment complex. The body had been concealed in a way that had made it harder to spot. The officers were deeply saddened by this heartbreaking discovery. Police in Santa Cruz, California have a 15-year-old boy under arrest in connection with the disappearance and apparent death of an 8-year-old girl. However, the officers didn't disclose the specific reasons for the boy's arrest or reveal his identity at that moment. The situation was clearly uncertain, leaving the community seeking answers and hoping for clarity after the devastating turn of events. The only clue available was footage of the arrested boy's mother expressing distress as he was taken into custody for questioning. Many details such as the cause of Maddie's death and the reasons behind it remained unknown. During a press conference at 11 a.m. on July 28th, Police Chief Kevin Vogel provided further details to reporters. Approximately 7:55 p.m., a Santa Cruz police detective conducted a secondary and more thorough canvass of the complex, which included the search of a recycle bin located in an enclosure on the first-floor parking structure at the Tannery Arts Center complex. Maddie's body was located within that recycle bin. I will merely say that Maddie's body was concealed in a recycle bin in a way that was not obvious or readily apparent. There was a 15-year-old male juvenile who resides in an apartment on the property upstairs from the location where Maddie's body was found, and he was nearby when Maddie was located. He was subsequently taken into custody, where he was brought back to the Santa Cruz Police Department and interviewed. Investigators from the Santa Cruz Police Department interviewed this individual into the early morning hours this morning, and he was subsequently arrested for the murder of Madison Knowlton. Additionally, investigators have located evidence that links the suspect to this horrific crime. Appears that she was lured to the suspect's apartment willingly. Additionally, we've determined that Maddie was murdered inside of the suspect's apartment. On that very evening following the press conference, a candlelight vigil drew together several hundred individuals who gathered to honor the memory of Maddie. Maddie's mother also requested a special Howl for Maddie event, where participants were encouraged to howl at the moon. This was a tribute to Maddie's fondness for wolves. The event resonated deeply with people sharing their moments of remembrance through pictures and videos on social media. Following the tragic homicide, leaders of Santa Cruz City Schools took proactive measures and offered advice to parents on how to guide their children through the difficult aftermath. They encouraged parents to help their children comprehend the circumstances surrounding Maddie's death and intervene if there were any misconceptions or false perceptions about the cause of the event. The main objective was to ensure that the children did not blame themselves or others for the heartbreaking situation. For as long as it could, age protected the identity of the teenager responsible for Maddie's death. But this all changed when Santa Cruz County District Attorney Jeff Roselle issued a statement. He stated that they had enough evidence against him and would charge the teenager as an adult, not only for first-degree murder, but also for kidnapping and other offenses. The law allows, under certain circumstances with certain types of offenses, a determination as to whether or not you want to charge someone as an adult or whether or not they're charged as a juvenile. Based on the information that we know at this point, there do appear to be charges that can be filed as an adult, and we are absolutely considering that. And these are the type of charges and the type of offenses that are and can be charged as, and with that, his name was released. The teenager responsible was revealed to be Adrian Jerry A.J. Gonzalez. He resided with his mother, Reggie DeMelig Factor, in the Tenery Arts Center, and this made him Maddie's neighbor. He was the only child of Reggie Factor and Abraham Lomai Gonzalez. Adrian's childhood wasn't the easiest. He was born in October 1999 at Sutter Maternity and Surgery Center in Santa Cruz as Adrian Jerry Gonzalez, according to his birth certificate obtained by the Sentinel. People close to the family described Adrian's upbringing as being shattered by divorce and frequent lack of money, employment, and housing. When Adrian was not yet 2 years old, Abraham Gonzalez was arrested on suspicion of felony, assault with a deadly weapon and misdemeanor battery in a relationship. He was convicted only of the latter charge and sentenced to 3 years on probation according to court records. Laura struggled to find work for quite some time, leaving her and Adrian relying on food stamps. Eventually, she managed to get a job at a healthcare center in Live Oak where she worked for many years as shared by Linda Jovich. Around February 2008, Laura found employment at a Dollar Tree store on East Cliff Drive near 14th Avenue in Live Oak. The store offered discounted food, toys, party supplies, and other items, and she worked as a cashier, stocked shelves, handled deliveries, and even performed restroom cleaning duties. However, her work environment turned unpleasant when her boss made unwelcome, inappropriate advances, forcibly touched her, and coerced her into engaging in unwanted activity with promises of preferential treatment. Subsequently, Jovish filed a harassment lawsuit on behalf of Laura, which was later settled out of court in May 2013 for an undisclosed sum. Following her departure from the Dollar Tree job, Laura faced financial difficulties leading to homelessness. She and Adrienne sought temporary accommodation with friends and eventually found residence at the Homeless Services Center on Coral Street in Santa Cruz. Seeking more stable living conditions, they later moved to the Tannery Arts Center where he grew up with the other kids, including Maddie. In a courtroom on April 27, 2021, Laura told Adrian of the pain he caused, reminding him how he and Maddie grew up together as children of the tannery and attended a birthday party in the same apartment where he would later kill Maddie. It was a shock to the community upon learning that Adrian could be capable of such an act, particularly in regard to a little girl like Maddie. In the beginning, some neighbors speculated that the incident might have been an unfortunate accident, possibly stemming from a childish game gone horribly wrong. They believed that Adrian, frightened by the situation, attempted to conceal the scene. Such beliefs were not unfounded. As to most people, Adrian appeared to be a typical teenager. In the area, Adrian was known for his impressive skills with a yo-yo, and he'd even worked as a counselor at the tannery. He was also a freshman at Santa Cruz High School. He's just like a normal kid. Like, he hangs out on levee with other normal kids and plays with his yo-yo all day long. Like, he doesn't really strike any chords as being a baby killer. His actions seemed far removed from anything that could connect him to such a terrible crime. One neighbor shared their fondness for Adrian, stating that they loved him and considered him an outstanding kid, even describing him as their poster child. The collective disbelief within the community further highlighted the stark contrast between the image they held of Adrian and the disturbing reality of his involvement in Maddie's tragic death. However, social media posts indicated that Adrian was a deeply troubled young man who might have been grappling with depression. An examination of his now disabled Instagram account revealed signs of his inner turmoil. In the weeks preceding Maddie's death, Adrian posted a series of cryptic messages on his account, hinting at the struggles he was facing. According to reports, he expressed feelings of anxiety and insecurity. In one post, he wrote, "Wears all black to try and look powerful and hide the crippling anxiety." The last post made on Adrian's Instagram page was on Monday, July 27, 2015. This was the day Maddie's body was discovered. The post featured a video of what appeared to be his fingers playing the song Mad World by Tears for Fears on a keyboard. The accompanying caption contained lyrics from the song's refrain, "The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I ever had." Interestingly, the song was well known for its inclusion in the February 2001 cult classic film Donnie Darko, which tells the story of a troubled teenager haunted by visions of a giant rabbit that influences him to commit crimes. What makes the timing of this Instagram post particularly chilling is that it occurred while hundreds of volunteers were outside his apartment desperately searching for any sign of Maddie. The post and the others found on the page raised concerns about Adrian's state of mind and added to the gravity of the situation. Katie Carroll, a friend of Adrian from middle school, provided some valuable insights about him. She described him as kind of an introvert who was struggling with deep depression when they were friends 2 years before the incident occurred. Katie recalled a distressing incident from back when Adrian had called her late at night and threatened to jump off the roof of his building. In response, Katie and her mother attempted to get him the help he needed by urging him to seek therapy. However, the friendship between Katie and Adrian eventually broke off due to his constant talk of taking his own life. Katie revealed that despite this, she never witnessed any self-harming behavior from him. After the friendship ended, Adrian became preoccupied with Katie and another friend who had also distanced herself from him. Despite his fixation, Katie clarified that she never felt directly threatened by him. Following the news of what had happened to Adrian, Katie revealed that she revisited her old Facebook messages with him and came across some unsettling messages. One message said, "I'll be gone eventually," while another contained the cryptic statement, "Something big will happen in high school." Following Adrian's arrest, more details about what really happened on the day he took Maddie's life came to light. During his interview with the police, the teenager confessed to luring Maddie to his apartment by offering her ice cream. He proceeded to tie her up and subjected her to a vicious assault. Following this, he disposed of her body in the bin located in the parking garage downstairs. Further revelation shed light on Adrian's behavior during the subsequent search for Maddie. Astonishingly, Adrian was among the many volunteers who actively participated in the search efforts. A neighbor disclosed to the media that Adrian persistently pestered him with questions about the progress of the search for Maddie's body. Additionally, he repeatedly approached the police inquiring about the advancement of the case, while they were still in the process of locating her. Even more shocking was Adrian's motive behind the crime. He revealed that he'd been contemplating taking his own life and decided to carry out the terrible act to observe how people would react to his actions by taking the life of an innocent girl. His obsession about the case subsequently led to his arrest. Apparently, on the day Maddie's body was found, Adrian was watching them intently as they were searching the bins, and the second the officers realized that Maddie was in there, he started to run despite the fact that he wouldn't have been able to even see what they'd found. On July 30th, 2015, Adrian made his initial appearance in court. He faced charges of kidnapping, murder, and assault. Dressed in a green t-shirt and khaki pants at juvenile hall, he presented a solemn demeanor and softly said yes when asked if he'd waive his right to a speedy trial. However, he refrained from entering a plea on that day. To represent him in the legal proceedings, Adrian was appointed public defenders Larry Begum and Layla Sayer. In the following months, Adrian's legal process gained momentum. County prosecutors successfully filed for his transfer to adult court. In August 2017, a hearing commenced to determine whether Adrian would be tried in juvenile or adult court. October 24, 2017, which was the final day of the transfer hearing, marked the moment when Adrian's fate was determined. Santa Cruz County Superior Court Judge John Salazar, presiding over the hearing, summarized the testimony of various doctors and psychiatric professionals who had been called throughout the case. Their testimonies ranged from Adrian suffering from depression to being characterized as a sociopath lacking empathy. Ultimately, Judge Salazar delivered his judgment describing the acts committed as cruel, callous, and calculated. Based on his assessment, he deemed Adrian unfit for the juvenile courts, which were designed to rehabilitate young offenders before they reached the age of 23. Salazar cited 3 legal elements to support his decision. Adrian's level of sophistication, which multiple teachers attested to, stating that he was intelligent and observant, the insufficient time available for rehabilitation within the juvenile system, and the gravity and circumstances of the crime which warranted trial in adult courts. As Judge Salazar issued the order, emotions ran high among Maddie's relatives and supporters who cried out in relief. The overwhelming feeling of joy was evident as they embraced the outcome of the hearing. In a prepared statement, the judge read the evidence, the mental experts, and police testimony. And in the end, the judge ruled Adrian Gonzalez will be tried in adult court. He was immediately moved to the main jail while he awaits trial. Santa Cruz County Superior Court Judge John Salazar said, AJ's lack of remorse and calm demeanor immediately after the killing of 8-year-old Maddie Middleton was the most heinous he has ever seen in more than 27 years on the bench. Maddie's mother and grandfather sat through 9 weeks of disturbing testimony and were satisfied with the judge's ruling. It was agonizing to listen to the testimony, to see the medical examiner crying on the stand. These were very stressful. I feel very bad for the jury that's going to have to look at all those awful photographs of what he did to my daughter. We were spared the photographs this time. We heard the details. The jury is going to have to see it all, and you can't unsee things. After the judge's ruling, Larry Begum expressed his disappointment to the media and revealed their plan to appeal the decision. With Adrian's case now proceeding as an adult trial, the implications were significant. If found guilty, he'd face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Immediately following the ruling, Adrian was transferred from juvenile hall to Santa Cruz County Jail. His bail was set at $5 million. In May 2018, during the adult proceedings linked to Maddie's murder, Adrian entered a plea of not guilty. During that same year, another distressing incident occurred involving Maddie. Her father, Mike, kept her ashes in a ceramic urn inside his car. Unfortunately, a car thief broke in and stole the urn. To this day, Maddie's ashes have not been returned. In February 2019, the state Senate passed SB 1391, a law preventing children 15 or younger from being transferred to adult court. However, Santa Cruz Judge John Salazar later ruled the law unconstitutional. Adrian's defense attorneys appealed this decision to the state Supreme Court, hoping that if the court found SB 1391 constitutional, Adrian could be sent back to the juvenile system. Maddie's mother Laura criticized the law, considering it ridiculous. After subsequent legal challenges, the state Supreme Court finally upheld SB 1391's constitutionality in a ruling issued in February 23. Subsequently, Judge Salazar had no choice but to remove the case from the adult court system. This ruling marked a significant development in Adrian's legal proceedings and its potential impact on his sentencing. In April 2021, Adrian's case was transferred to the juvenile court system, and he immediately pleaded guilty to all the charges against him. On April 27, 2021, during his sentencing, Maddie's father, Mike Middleton, spoke expressing the tremendous loss he felt. He acknowledged accepting the loss, but emphasized that it did not make the pain any easier. It only allowed him to find some semblance of peace. Maddie's mother, Laura, took the opportunity to play a near 4-minute video recorded by Maddie herself, giving a tour of the Tannery Arts Center where they lived. While the video played, Adrian averted his eyes from the screen. Following this, Adrian also spoke. He expressed that he had no intention of exacerbating the pain with his words. He said he recognized the suffering he'd caused and expressed his commitment to working on his issues to prevent anyone else from experiencing such tragedy. Adrian hoped that through time and his apology, Maddie's family might find it in their hearts to forgive him for what he'd done. After all these, Adrian received a sentence, which involved being sent to a state division of juvenile justice facility. There, he may be eligible for release in his earliest 3.5 years. However, his maximum term of confinement extends until he turns 25. In addition to the time served, Adrian is required to register as an offender for life and pay $22,000 in restitution fees. In response to the sentencing, Mike, Maddie's father, conveyed his disappointment, stating that Adrian did not show enough remorse during the hearing. It didn't sound sincere. It sounded staged, coached, and I can imagine why, he said. I hope that he never has the opportunity to do anything like this again. That's what needs to happen. Lisa Jordan, Maddie's grandmother, called the sentencing a joke, expressing her frustration. He'll be in jail for a while and then they'll let him go. He gets to walk. And when he does it again, maybe then they'll take it seriously, Lisa said. From what we know at the moment, when Adrian turns 25, there'll be no guarantee that he'll be released from the juvenile justice system. The court can be petitioned to extend his time in custody, which might offer some relief for Maddie's family. However, the hurt he caused will undoubtedly remain in their hearts forever. As we come to the end of Maddie's case, we can't help but feel the profound sadness and loss experienced by her family and the community. As we reflect on Adrian's actions, one question lingers in our minds. Did the authorities make the right decision in handling Adrian's case, considering the gravity of his actions?